It's a cold July night in 2008 in a comfortable home in Westville, Durban, South Africa. A brother and sister are waiting for a text message, but they aren't waiting for a friend or a lover. They're waiting for instructions from God. The Lotte family lived a life that many would envy. Johannes and Maria were successful, deeply religious, and by all accounts, devoted parents to their two children, Nicolette and Hardus. But on this night, the suburban dream was quietly beginning to unravel. Nothing seemed unusual from the outside. No screams, no alarms, no sign that anything was wrong. But inside the house, something had already changed. By the time the sun rose, Johannes and Maria Lotte were dead, brutally murdered in their own home. At first glance, it looked like a botched robbery gone wrong. A violent break-in, senseless brutality, the kind of tragedy that shocks a quiet neighborhood. But when police arrived, something didn't feel right. The house told one story, the people inside told another. The investigators looked into the eyes of the Lotte children, Hardus and Nicolette. They didn't see shock. They didn't see grief. They saw conviction, calm certainty. Inside the house was a scene of absolute carnage. Yet, as investigators began piecing together what had happened, the horror of the scene was eclipsed by something more disturbing. There had been no forced entry, no desperate struggle to escape, no clear sign of intruders at all. And then the truth began to surface. The killers weren't strangers. They were inside the house all along. They were the Lotte's own children. And the motive? A series of text messages believed to be sent by God himself. To understand why two sheltered siblings would turn on their parents, we have to look at the man who entered their lives 2 years earlier, Matthew Naidoo. Matthew was Nicolette's boyfriend, but to the Lotte siblings, he was much more. He convinced them that he was the third son of God, a divine messenger sent to guide them. On the surface, Matthew didn't look like a monster. He wasn't violent in the traditional sense. He didn't storm in the Lotte home with a weapon. Instead, people who knew him described someone soft, articulate, intensely persuasive. He knew how to sound calm, convincing and certain. That certainty was his power. Naidoo craved importance and control. In relationships, he positioned himself as the center of meaning, the one who understood things others didn't. With Nicolette Lotte, especially, he became more than a boyfriend. He became an authority figure, a guide, someone who claimed to have answers when she felt lost. Naidoo began a process of systematic brainwashing. He would send text messages claiming they were directly from the Almighty. These messages weren't about love or peace. They were about isolation. He told them their parents were demonic and that they were standing in the way of the siblings' spiritual inheritance. The plan was chillingly calculated. Naidoo told Hardus and Nicolette that God had decreed the parents must die. On that July night, Naidoo waited at a nearby shopping mall to establish an alibi, leaving the siblings to do the unthinkable. Hardus, 20 years old, lured his father Johannes into a room and strangled him. In another part of the house, Nicolette attacked her mother, Maria. The most haunting detail of the night, at one point when the parents didn't immediately die, the siblings actually stopped to pray, asking God for strength to finish the task. They truly believed they were performing a holy duty. The trial in the Durban High Court was a sensation. Courtrooms were packed. Media coverage was relentless. The public struggled to understand how an ordinary suburban family could descend into such calculated violence. The defense argued diminished responsibility. They claim Nicolette Lotter and Hardest Lotter were victims of psychological coercion so intense that their own will had effectively been overridden by Matthew's. According to experts' testimony, years of manipulation and control, spiritual domination had reshaped how they perceived reality itself. A clinical psychologist described the siblings as being like clowns on a string, unable to think independently, reacting instead to Naidu's commands, beliefs, and constructed world. The court heard how fear, devotion, and psychological dependency had been carefully cultivated until resistance felt impossible. But the prosecution argued something far more direct. That manipulation, no matter how powerful, did not erase accountability for murder. After years of legal proceedings, in 2012, the judge delivered the final blow. Matthew Naidu was sentenced to 2 life sentences for the murders, along with additional 20 years imprisonment for related offenses, including robbery and attempted murder. The court described him as the central architect of the crime, calculating, controlling, and fully aware of his actions. The siblings received substantially lighter sentences. Nicolette Lotter was sentenced to 12 years in prison, while Hardest Lotter received 10 years. While convicted of their involvement in the murders, the court formally acknowledged the extreme and sustained psychological domination they had endured. Their reduced sentences reflected the findings that their autonomy had been profoundly compromised, even if not entirely erased. After serving significant portions of their sentences, both siblings were granted parole, Hardest in 2016 and Nicolette in 2018. They returned to society quietly, under strict conditions, carrying the lifelong weight of what had happened. They live private lives today, forever marked by the tragedy and the choices that bound them to it. But the questions remain. How does an ordinary person lose their grip on reality so completely? And can someone truly be programmed to kill? This wasn't just murder driven by money or revenge. It was a tragedy of faith twisted into a weapon, belief reshaped into control, devotion transformed into obedience. The Lotter case remains one of South Africa's most chilling reminders that sometimes the most dangerous person isn't the one holding the knife. It's the one whispering in your ears. Thanks for watching my first deep dive into South Africa true crime. If this story shocked you, hit the like button and subscribe. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Can brainwashing ever be an excuse for murder? I'll see you in the next case.